stuff? Why were we waived off of that so early on when we're now being told that we don't know and that we should do a thorough investigation of exactly that?
Martha, I deny that you were waived off of that by me. I would say you were waived off of some more outrageous conspiracy theories that had really no categorical sense to them. But the idea of a lab leak was never anything that I thought was impossible.
So you remember that interview here on The Story. Then NIH Director Francis Collins, he has now retired, confirmed that it was plausible that COVID escaped from a lab, as new internal documents obtained by Fox News from months prior reveal a concerted effort to suppress that idea from making it into the public purview. Here's special report anchor Brett Baer.
January 31st, Dr. Christian Anderson, a noted virologist at the Scripps lab, privately tells Fauci that after discussions with his colleagues, some of COVID-19's features potentially look engineered. Just 4 days later, 5 American, British, and Australian researchers, who were all on that Fauci conference call, authored preliminary findings that abandoned their earlier private beliefs that COVID was likely the result of a laboratory leak. It's unclear what new evidence prompted such a drastic 180, but private communications show the various drafts of their report are sent to Fauci and Collins for editing and approval. More than a month later, we now learn Drs. Christian Anderson and Robert Gary, 2 of the authors of that scientific report who were in close contact with Dr. Fauci, are awarded a nearly $9 million research grant from Fauci's agency.
Okay. So that's a lot to absorb, right? In an email from April 2020, Dr. Francis Collins asks Dr. Fauci how they can, quote, help put down this very destructive conspiracy. Former CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield joins me now. Dr. Redfield, welcome back to the program. Good to have you with us once again. What do you make of these emails? What story do they tell you? And do they back up what you have said in the past, which is that you think it likely did generate in the lab?
Well, thanks for having me, Martha. I do want to say, as a clinical virologist, I always have said that I don't think it's biologically plausible that this virus emerged from a bat to some intermediate species into humans and became one of the most transmissible viruses that we know in human disease, that this virus clearly had a detour, and that detour was being educated how to infect human tissue in the laboratory. I think that's the most plausible explanation. I think the problem I have with the emails and everything that we've just seen, that everything that Brett brought up, which is so important, is really antithetical to science. I mean, the purpose of science is to have rigorous debate about different hypotheses. I've never really experienced in my life where there was private telephone calls among scientists that had a decision on what position they would take collectively. And to see that position then published in a scientific journal like Lancet, to say that individuals that thought like myself had a different scientific hypothesis somehow had to be put down and viewed as conspirators. This is really antithetical to science. I have firm belief that science eventually will resolve and solve this mystery of the origin of COVID. But in order for science to do it, we've got to embrace science. And what we saw here in these emails is really antithetical to science.
Okay, so the question is why? Why would Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins, as I asked him in that interview, wave everyone off the lab theory? And you can see them talking about doing exactly that in these emails. What did they have at stake? Why didn't they want people to think it came from the lab?
Well, I think their intentions were in their view, good intentions. I think they believed that somehow discussing a possible leak from a laboratory would be detrimental to science. In reality, the way they responded to this, in my view, has been detrimental to science. And it's not just the NIH leadership. It was the broader scientific community that decided in a really anti-science way that there was only one way we were going to allow people to think about this. I think they did it because they were very concerned that if it was thought that this may have come from science in a laboratory, that would harm science, and they were trying to protect science.
Well, did they think I'm sorry to interrupt, but did they think that it would harm science, or did they think that it would throw shade on them and the relationship that the NIH and funding and money that went to these experiments, juicing up these viruses, coronaviruses, in this lab?
Well, there's no question that there's that complicating factor also, as you know, since this research was funded by the NIH.
Yes.
But I do believe that the real goal behind this was a fear of hurting science and the power of science and the ability of science and what it can contribute to society. In reality, they accomplished the opposite. I think science has been very harmed by this. And I think, I'm still going to be an optimist that the scientific community will come back to embrace the principles of science and have a rigorous debate and use science to unravel the origin. I think if you look at the data that we have, and Brett presented some of it, there's a lot of data that's been gathered over the last 2 years that really point to the hypothesis that I support, that this virus evolved in the laboratory.
But if that's the case...
And there's very limited...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying there's very limited data that we've gotten over the last 3 years to support Dr. Collins's and Dr. Fauci's position.
But isn't it dangerous to ignore your side of the theory? Because especially now that we're dealing, when you and I spoke, you said essentially this virus was supercharged in the lab. And that is why it is so virulent and so able to continue to spin off all of these variants that we're still dealing with. Dr. Fauci is still in charge of overseeing the handling of this virus in this country. And if he doesn't accept that notion, doesn't it make it pretty hard for him to dictate the direction of dealing with it and tamping it down?
Yeah, I think it's harmful in the most the way that's the most harmful from my point of view is what I put in the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. I really think we need to have a moratorium on gain-of-function research until the larger society can debate whether it has value for society, and if we're going to do it, how we do it in a safe and responsible way. I do not believe this is a decision that should be made just by a group of scientists. It has enormous impact, and I do think the most important thing is now we have gain-of-function research being done all over the world, and we used to only have to defend ourselves against a pathogen that came from nature. Now we have to worry about a pathogen from the lab or nature.
And I got to go, but given all this, I need a short answer. Do you think that Dr. Fauci should be fired? Should he lose his job for not recognizing this side of the equation, which is very serious and has led to serious ramifications around the world?
Well, I hope that Tony would reflect on this and provide the science leadership that we need to move forward. I'm not going to comment. I have a lot of respect for him over the years. I think he needs to step back and not try to second guess and make things a way that he thinks the world can hear. We should just tell the truth.
That says it all. Dr. Redfield, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.